ask a question, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Tonight, you can also sign up for our newsletter by pressing star 6 at any time during the call. So remember, to ask a question, please press star 3. To subscribe to our newsletter, press star 6. With that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Sorensen. Congressman, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Dirk, so much, and good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for participating in tonight's telephone town hall. Tonight, I'm so looking forward to hearing about the issues that you care about. I'll respond to your questions and share information about the work that I'm doing right here on Capitol Hill. And if you'd like to ask a question, it's really easy to do. Please press star 3. And if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter to stay informed, press star 6. Again, it's star 3 to ask a question, star 6 to subscribe to the newsletter. I know that many of you, the topic that is top of mind is the looming government shutdown and how it impacts your life. I want to share with you what's going on today and what I'm doing to prevent this shutdown and any future shutdowns. So number one, I want to be really clear. Our job in Congress is to appropriate funding so that we avoid government shutdowns. It is literally and quite simply the most basic responsibility of Congress. A government shutdown, it would mean significant cuts to programs that working families, whether it's in northern Illinois, western or central Illinois, rely on, including food security programs, education, access to clean drinking water. And right now, today, it's not that we've got a problem with Republicans versus Democrats today. It's that Democrats and moderate Republicans want to work together, but we've got extremists that want to cut these investments, which would put our economy at risk, force middle-class Americans to pay more for essential goods and services. And so I want to make sure that we fund the government to keep these vital services open, get back to work creating jobs and lowering costs. And I'm going to work with anyone in any party, Democrat or Republican, anybody who wants to make sure that we fund the government so we protect our working families. And we need to make sure that we're working on both sides of the aisle to do the work for the people who sent us here. And today, there are many more Republicans and Democrats who don't want a shutdown. So just another quick reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, press star 3. If you'd like to subscribe to the newsletter, press star 6. I did want to begin and touch on a plan that I recently released to cut costs for working families. This is something that I hear, not just in my neighborhoods, but when I travel across our district. We know that inflation and rising costs are being felt by neighbors all across the district. There's a real human cost to what's happening as people are struggling to make ends meet today. And so I'm committed to reducing costs, and I have a plan that's centered around 3 different ideas. Number 1, I'm on the Agriculture Committee, and we need to pass a farm bill that helps produce more food and energy here in the Midwest. This is going to lower prices while empowering our farmers. Number 2, we need to lower prescription drug costs. The fact that some people in our district are paying the same at the drugstore as they are for their rent, all the while Big Pharma is actively delaying tactics that keep lower-cost generics out of the hands of the people who need them. I'm not going to give up until the costs at the pharmacy go down for everyone. And then number 3, and finally, we need to build on permitting reform to focus on energy transmission, because that's going to lower your energy costs. Simply put, we can't just invest in new energy sources. We have to have the infrastructure to get that power to our homes. And so these are just some of the components of my plan to cut costs for working families. And you can read about this entire plan just by going to the website sorensen.house.gov. So again, if you've got any questions, hit star 3. If you'd like to subscribe to the newsletter, press *6. One of the major bills that I'm working on to get through Congress is the Farm Bill. This Farm Bill will support our farmers, nutrition assistance, and so much more. And the Farm Bill lasts 5 years. So I want to share some of the priorities that we have. Number one, we have to understand that farming today comes with more challenges than it did before. We're seeing more extreme weather events, more frequent droughts, rising input costs, and so much more. And it's difficult to farm today compared to the way that it was back in the early 20th century. So my priorities for this year's Farm Bill are, number one, strengthening crop insurance. Right now, the current safety net does not address the levels of risk that are posed to crops, especially as we have more instances of severe weather. We have to fund advanced agriculture research and innovation. We have to prioritize research and innovation that will ensure that we stay competitive in this world market. We've got to be prepared to continue to provide food for our nation and export. We've got to incentivize sustainable farming practices, which promote soil health, improve water quality. We have to reduce excess fertilizer runoff, and we have to focus on conservation. And then also, it's protecting food security. As families struggle with high costs, which I was talking about, we shouldn't be making it harder for families to bring groceries home from the grocery store. And so the Farm Bill expiration is September 30th of this year, coming up in 2 days. So here's what we need to focus on. First of all, crop insurance and agriculture disaster programs, they're permanently authorized. They're not going to be affected. Commodity programs that support corn and soy will not be affected until the fall of next year. And many of the conservation programs that we have, the funding dates and the expiration dates are affected differently. So if you've got any questions, reach out to my office. We can get further information to you. And then finally, SNAP benefits will not be affected if the funds are appropriated via the fiscal year 24 agriculture appropriations bill or any CR or continuing resolution. And so I do want to start taking questions in just a minute. So make sure you press *3 if you'd like to ask a question, or press *6. And so with that, I'd love to start hearing from your questions. So I'll turn it back over to Dirk.
Thank you very much, Congressman. We actually have a guest who's joined us on the line that I would like to introduce and get an opening statement from, and that is Luis Rivas Jr. He's the president of the Illinois State Association of Letter Carriers, who has joined us. Luis, welcome to the call.
Hey, sorry I'm late. I was having technical issues, but I finally was able to get in. First of all, I thank the congressman for the opportunity to address this group. As I said, my name is Louis. I'm the current president of the Illinois State Association of Letter Carriers. We serve over 15,000 members statewide just in the state of Illinois. Each state has their own state president and their own state association. And our main focus as an organization at the state level is to focus on legislation. The fact that we are federal employees, our main issue is dealing with, at the federal level, with Washington, D.C., White House, and the Senate, addressing issues that are important to the Postal Service, whether it's postal reform, door-to-door delivery, 6-day delivery, which is now part of the law, is part of the Postal Reform Act, maintaining, try to get shipping and equity up so the Postal Service can deliver mail, alcohol through the mail. Those are one of the things we're working on. So we work with all the congressmen. Each congressional district has a letter carrier assigned to represent letter carriers on issues that are important to letter carriers. And in the 17th district, that person is Justin Lott, who I believe is on the call. I oversee our legislative liaisons who represent the 17 congressional districts across the country. We are bipartisan. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, Blue Party, Purple Party. If your interests serve the Postal Service and mainly your constituents, then the National Association of Letter Carriers at the national level and the Illinois State Association of Letter Carriers will support those candidates who support us. So I'm the 34-year veteran of the Postal Service. As I like to say, I am on the KMA club, which means I'm eligible to retire. I can go any day I want because I have the years and I have the service, but I really enjoy being a mailman. So that's all I have for now.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on this call, sir, and giving us the brief open and rundown. We do have a number of people looking to ask questions. If you've got a question that you'd like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Again, *3 to ask a question, and *6 to join the Congressman's e-newsletter. Now, our first question tonight is from Daniel and Moline, who asks, in preparation for a government shutdown, I'm wondering how this will impact everyday services like mail delivery and Social Security benefits. Congressman?
I think that's a great question from Daniel, and I'm going to have Louis answer the question about mail services in just a moment. But first, we have to understand that when the government shuts down, it's going to mean, that there's a ripple effect across the country, that this has a real impact on everyday lives. First of all, everyone will receive their Social Security. And so I don't believe that we need to worry about that today. So rest assured. However, Social Security will provide only limited services. So if someone needs a Social Security card, or they need an appointment, or if you're submitting benefit applications, these are going to be very slow. The administrator is going to stop services like benefit verifications and processing overpayments, for instance. And then the problem with respect to Social Security benefits is if you need to get a hold of someone customer service, the wait times are going to dramatically increase because we just won't be able to sustain the amount of calls. And so, Louis, I want to thank you and thank our letter carriers for being out there, not just in all different kinds of weather, but to be out there to continue to deliver the mail that we need. It's not just that, we've got letters that are coming into our mailboxes. We've got prescription drugs that are being delivered right to people's homes. And so this is so important. So, Louis, how will a government shutdown impact mail delivery? Do we still have Louis?
Yeah, I had to unmute myself. So,
okay.
Being an experienced letter carrier and going through a number of government shutdowns, the Postal Service will not be affected whatsoever by any government shutdown. And the reason being is since the Postal Service reorganized in 1970 due to the postal strike of 1970 and created the United States Postal Service, they became a separate quasi-government agency. While we are considered federal employees and meet the requirements of federal employees, the Postal Service is no longer reliant on federal tax dollars to sustain the post office. We generate our own revenue through first-class mail, through parcel post, through priority mail, express mail, through what everyone calls junk mail. But we at the post office consider revenue because that generates additional revenue for the post office. So this is my, at least, I can't remember how many, at least sixth or seventh postal shutdown. We will be delivering mail every day, 6 days a week, as we did during the pandemic. We were considered essential workers then, and we're still considered essential workers now. So nothing will change. We're still dealing with staffing issues across the country. So yeah, it might be late, but it'll get there. Or it might be delayed, but you will receive your mail. You'll still receive your medication. You'll still receive your checks. You'll still receive your parcels. A lot of people use the Postal Service to receive their parcels, whether it's Amazon, Walmart, Target. That the Postal Service is working with a lot of the retailers to generate additional revenue. to help sustain the post office. But yeah, we will be there through wind, rain, sleet, or snow, pandemic, and through a government shutdown.
Thank you, Louis, and we'll send it back over to Dirk for a poll.
Yes, sir, Congressman. For everybody that's joined us on this call this evening, this technology allows us to hear and listen to you with your opinions. And we've got a poll question to ask. All you need to do is use your telephone keypad to register your vote/opinion. And here goes with the first question. Do you support a government shutdown? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. Again, please use your telephone keypad to register your opinion here. The question we're looking for your input on, do you support a government shutdown? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. See, a number of people are registering their response. Thank you very much for participating in our first poll question. And now let's move on to our next question. This one comes from Lynn in Rockford, who asks, is there anything that can be done to stop robocalls that come in all day long?
Oh, my gosh. Well, Lynn, this is a great question, and this is a thing that is just happening, in your household. This is happening in a lot of different households, and not just in our district. I mean, this is a problem that's going on, nationwide, and I've heard from so many people, and especially these are people that call into our office who are seniors. They're telling me that the robocalls and now the robo-texts, they're getting worse and worse. And for me, what I look at with this is the risk is going up. That people are going to be duped out of potentially thousands of dollars just from people that are trying to cause harm. And we have to understand that robocalls, they cause billions of dollars of theft every year. And so it is the responsibility of Congress to do more, especially when our seniors are at risk. And that's why I led 35 members of Congress, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle, 35 members of Congress in a letter that demands that the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, provide plans to address scam robocalls and text, which heavily target seniors. And all I can say is stay tuned, because this is something that is not only important to me, I know it's important to a lot of people in the district, and we're going to get some movement on this because I'm focused on it.
So, Congressman, are you ready for the next question?
Let's do it. Thanks, Dirk.
Perfect. So once again, for everybody that's on the call with us, please remember to press *3 if you'd like to ask a question. And our next question comes from Patrick in Bloomington, who asks, I got the chance to listen to your plan about lowering costs on the news. Now, how do you plan to work with the Republicans in Congress to get this passed?
Well, first of all, Patrick, we've got to understand today, when we look at the impasse that's going on, where the worst of the partisan politics reside, we should understand, and I sit on the floor and we make these votes. All right, we have a vote series coming up here later this evening. Listen, Democrats and Republicans are largely together on most of the things that we're dealing with today. And so the problem is we've got just a few people and an extreme with an extreme agenda that want to cause chaos. And so the plan that I'm proposing, it includes a lot of bipartisan ideas as we work out some larger pieces of legislation like the Farm Bill. I'm going to be reaching out to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle so that we can get these implemented. And I have a unique honor of being able to be in Congress without the background of politics. My background's in meteorology, in science. And so it doesn't matter to me who I work with in Congress as long as we're doing right by the people and we're getting results. And so those are the things that will get Republican buy-in so that we can lower the cost for families. Because if we're focused just on the solutions in Illinois 17, they're the same solutions that are going to happen in a district across the river, for instance. And so we need to pass a farm bill that helps produce more food and energy right here in Middle America. We need to crack down on big pharma's delay tactics that are prohibiting lower drug costs when you go to CVS or Jewel or Schnucks. And we need to build on permitting reform so that it lowers our energy costs. And so those are three pieces of the plan that will work. And I am having conversations with members on the other side of the aisle. And a lot of that is happening because I'm unique in Congress, that I don't have the political pedigree. And that's a good thing in the partisan divide that we have today.
So, Congressman, I'd like to borrow your audience for just a second and ask another poll question. And I do appreciate everyone that took the time to respond to our first poll question. I'm looking for you to use your telephone keypad to register your opinion on this. Are you paying too much for gas, groceries, and other essential goods? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. So again, please take a moment to key in your response using your telephone keypad. Are you paying too much for gas, groceries, and other essential goods? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. Thank you very much to everyone who has taken time to answer that question. I see a number of people are still registering their opinion. And let's go ahead and get back to the next question. Quick reminder, *3 if you'd like to submit a question. *6 if you would like to join the Congressman's e-newsletter list. So our next question comes from Clara. Clara has family in the military and asks, with the shutdown, what will happen to them, and is there a way to ensure that they're paid?
Right. Clara, I think that's a great question because we need to make sure that the people that are putting their lives on the line for our country are being taken care of, that they're not victims of the extreme politics that is going to derail our government. And so first things first, all active duty and guard and reservists are required to work without pay. On-base, non-acute health care will cease, although off-base care provided through TRICARE is not affected. For instance, like on-base child care will be open on a case-by-case basis. And then finally, I joined Congresswoman Amelia Sykes of Ohio in introducing the bipartisan Pay Our Military Act, which will ensure that all military employees are paid in any shutdown should it happen. And so we need to make sure that we pass that because how can we in our government ask our military men and women and their families to go into harm's way if the government isn't supporting them with a paycheck?
So, Congressman, our next question was proposed by Linda in Galesburg, who says, SNAP feeds me and my family. I'm not sure if they're impacted if the government shuts down, but I'm certainly worried about it. Is Congress doing anything to protect me? And if so, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, this is personal. Why is this so personal? It's because food prices have gone up. Food prices have gone up, but so has the cost of jobs. So is the cost of gas. So is the cost of just about everything. And so right now, we have folks here in Congress that want to take away nutrition programs. And what I see in our district, as people are struggling to make the ends meet, we cannot afford to have these benefits go away. So first and foremost, the WIC program, it is going to quickly run out of funding. And so we're going to have to make sure that we work to provide food and for children and parents in need. In case of a prolonged shutdown, SNAP benefits may also be affected, but we may not see an effect immediately. And then I think the bottom line is we have a responsibility to feed families, working families, and then I've gone and talked with a lot of students and schools in my tenure as a meteorologist to talk weather to a lot of school kids. I've gone to a lot of schools that had breakfast and they had lunch, and the educators and the administrators in these schools, they know which backpacks need an extra banana, apple, or granola bar. These are the kids that they may not have food when they get home. I mean, this isn't something that happens somewhere else. I mean, this happens right here. And so that's why it's so personal to me. Because if we don't have kids that are comfortable, that have food, then how do we expect them to learn? And these are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And so we have a responsibility to do right by them. And so I'll be working in Congress to make sure that we don't cut a dime from these programs because they're so, quite honestly, effective. And it's not just in the cities. It's in our rural homes as well that make up nearly 70% of the benefits of the SNAP program.
So if you're enjoying this update, I encourage you to press *6 on your telephone keypad now. That'll get you signed up for Congressman Sorensen's newsletter. Again, please press *6 to get on our email update list. And with that, let's go to our next question from Todd, Prophetstown, who asks, right now there are thousands of illegals crossing the southern border. We need to shut the border down. What are you doing to stop these illegals from crossing our border?
Well, Todd, I think this is a good question. I mean, and this is a question that we're discussing on the floor of the House of Representatives. First and foremost, our country needs secure borders. We need to know the people that are crossing our borders. And so this is a problem that needs a solution. It doesn't need politics. It needs solutions. And so a couple of things I think about. Number one is we have to look at why these folks are making the trek to come to this country and look at what they're trying to escape in their home country. At the same time, we cannot just let everyone across the southern border. We have to have a system that allows us in our country and law enforcement to know who's coming across the border, to be able to say no to the people who are not allowed across our border, that keeps us safe. And there is bipartisan public support for immigration reform. And we need this in Congress. And this isn't what I believe, but this is what we all believe. This is what everybody in our district. You know, we want to make sure that we're supporting families that are struggling today. But we also need to make sure that we're focused on security. I have a proposal to increase the number of border officers, to increase our security, to bring agencies together, to stop the flow of fentanyl that's hurting families across the nation. We also have to understand that the fentanyl crisis isn't just coming across the southern border, that a lot of this is coming from the West, from Asia. And so it's not just simple as building a wall. And listen, I voted for increased funding for personnel, and these are common sense policies that have support on both sides of the aisle. But then look, it's weird for me to say this today, but I wholeheartedly agree with Mitch McConnell because a government shutdown worsens our border crisis. It cuts the pay for Border Patrol agents. We're asking so much of them right now. They're working to secure our border. And so if we were to shut the government down beginning Sunday and we have no plans to open it up, we're going to have a worse border crisis than we did yesterday. And so we have to make sure that we fund the government and fund our border security.
Congressman Sorensen, John from Northern Illinois wants to know, would you consider looking into preventing pharmaceutical companies from advertising on TV to reduce drug costs?
Oh, that's a great question because I listen to these ads all the time and ask my doctor if Crivesto is right for me, and I don't even know what these things are. But look, we need to make sure that our healthcare providers have the information in front of them to make good decisions to keep us healthy. One of the things that I have done already in Congress, I introduced the Stop Games Act. Now, this would create more affordable generic drug options, and it slows down, it basically allows us to make sure that we're lowering the costs. But certainly, I would look at things like making sure that we don't have pharmaceutical companies that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to be on Wheel of Fortune. We need to make sure that there's a connection with our healthcare facilities so that they can purchase lower cost drugs because then we're going to see the benefit. And so my bill would allow the FDA to reject a petition if they determine that the purpose of the claim is to stop or delay the entry of a new drug into the market. So I will look into legislation that is going to prevent these big pharma companies from advertising on TV.
So do you have a question on your mind? Please press *3 to enter the question queue. And our next question comes from Christine in Macomb, who asks, or states, I come from a long line of union workers and want to know what you are doing to support UAW workers and our union members.
Christy, that's a great question. First and foremost, in our country, unions help build the middle class. We have so many important jobs in our district today because we've had collective bargaining, because we've had good wages that help provide for families. And to be honest with you, union members are the backbone that help keep our economy going in this district and across the Midwest. It's the workers that come together who build our strong communities. This is one of the big reasons why the very first time that I spoke on the floor of the House of Representatives, I can't tell you, I was quite a bit nervous. I remember it being similar to the first time I ever went on live television, okay? I went down there and I stood at that podium on the floor of the House of Representatives and I spoke on the PRO Act, okay? This is legislation that makes it easier for workers to unionize. It's the right to organize together, to speak collectively with one voice. And so when we look at what's going on today, I fully support our UAW workers as they strike for better benefits, better wages, better working conditions. And ultimately, what is good for workers is going to be good for our communities. It's quite a bit north of Macomb, but we're looking at the Belvidere Jeep plant. When Stellantis moved the facility from Belvidere to Mexico to save the company 20-25%, building Jeep Cherokees. They didn't give a 20-25% discount to the consumers. When you go to the Jeep dealership, you're paying full price these days. All the while, the big corporations are making record profits. And so we need to make sure that we're sharing the wealth with the workers who are putting these vehicles together. And we need to get that plant back up and running again. To any UAW workers out there, I got your back, and I'm going to see to it that we keep our economy going strong with great union members. And I'd like to turn it over to Louis from the Postal Service, from our letter carriers. What are you thinking about, as we're seeing this strike go on?
Well, I think it's like you said, it's just corporate greed across the country. A lot of corporations are laying off, increasing their prices. A lot of price gouging happened during the pandemic, and it's affecting a lot of working families. I know that I read the other day that there's going to be some layoffs with John Deere out in the Quad Cities, and that's going to be, members are going to be out of jobs, families are going to be affected. They're going to be, eventually reliant on whether it's public aid or SNAP or what other benefits. They need to find work. Some jobs are hard to come by. Other jobs, the pay scale isn't that great. So, working in a union, like the Postal Service has 4 postal unions. They have the letter carriers, which I'm a member of. They have the APWU, which is the postal workers, which work inside the building. They have the mail handlers, which are part of the laborers union. And then they have the national rural carriers. So there's 4 unions in the Postal Service, and all 4 unions work together. And we try to negotiate contracts. The letter carriers, my union right now, is in the midst of negotiations. We're trying to avoid going into binding arbitration as we try to come up to an agreement. And we're trying to, come up with an agreement that's somewhat comparable wage-wise to what UPS makes. UPS came out strong in their positioning from the very beginning on what they were looking for. They held fast on the income they were looking at, and our union is trying to negotiate that. While our union isn't being public, what we're doing for a lot of different reasons, we're proud of what the members of the Teamsters were able to accomplish to benefit their members, and it helps the work and support the president for future negotiations with the Postal Service. In previous negotiations, the Postal Service used to cry poor financially, and every year you would hear the post office lost billions of dollars. While that was true on paper, it was not true on the bottom line. The reason we were losing billions of dollars was because of the pre-funding issue that was imposed in 2006 with the Post Office Accountability Enhancement Act, which stated that the post office would pre-fund future retiree employee benefits at the tune of 75 years at $5 billion a year. Well, prior to the economy crashing in 2008, 2009, the post office was flushed with mail. There was tons of mail in the post office. We had, a lot of mail. We were working a lot of overtime. When the economy crashed, it affected the 3 biggest mailers: the banking industry, the credit card industry, and the mortgage companies. And then that capped the revenue by them. So, but unions have been beneficial to America, and I'm proud to be a union member, and I will continue to support all other unions that go out on strike.
Yeah, Louis, I'm glad you shared that, because that's something that we don't, I don't think that the layperson knows that, right? So when the economy tanked, there was less going through the mail, but you still had bills that you needed to pay. And we have so many working families that needed to be able to provide for their families. And that's what being a part of the Letter Carriers Union was so valuable too. I'll send it back to Dirk for our next question.
Certainly, Congressman. Our next question is from Penny in Canton, who wonders, will you be able to sponsor measures for Alzheimer's support?
Penny, this is so important to me because I lost my grandpa Sorensen from Alzheimer's. I remember going to his care facility the first time when he didn't recognize me. He didn't recognize his own grandson. And it took me like 3 weeks. I talked to my dad, and he was like, Eric, you're going to know when to go back. And then I went back like a couple of weeks later, and my grandpa, he said, where have you been? You're the best nurse that we have here. And so my grandpa didn't know that I was his grandson anymore, but he remembered that I was a good person. And that's what I carry on, after losing him. I believe that every American should have access to high quality and affordable health care. That's number one. But also understanding that Alzheimer's in our country has reached crisis proportions. as we see our baby boomers who are aging today. And that this isn't just a diagnosis that the patient has to deal with, it's that families deal with this. And so this is a real issue that we do really need to focus on. I was proud to join my colleagues earlier this year in calling for an additional $226 million for funding for Alzheimer's research. And so I'm not going to stop. And we must make sure that we take care of our seniors. And by doing that, I'd also be remiss if I didn't say that we should never cut Social Security or Medicare.
So another reminder, the congressman and his staff put out an e-newsletter, and that e-newsletter you can get signed up for right now by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Again, stay informed. Get enrolled in the congressman's e-newsletter by pressing *6 right now. And our next question comes from Jennifer in Bloomington. States, with education being so expensive for students, I'm seeing more students going to community college. So how do we keep costs down for students but keep wages for instructors livable?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jennifer. One of the things that we have to make sure that we do is we have to make sure that we're supporting our kids as they continue through their scholastic career. I think today about where is our cure of cancer going to come from? It's probably going to come from someone in middle school today, right? So how do we make sure that child who's in a middle school today has the ability to go to college? Right? I worry today that we have too many kids that say, oh, I don't think I'm going to go to college. It's too expensive. Or I don't want to have the burden of all of that debt. Right? One of the things that I look at is the fact that we have such predatory interest rates. We need to make sure that we lower these interest rates. Because it isn't just that we can make sure that someone gets $5,000 to help their loan. Well, that may not even pay the interest in a year or even a couple of months. And so we need to work to make sure that tuition and that the government helps out to make sure that tuition is affordable. And community colleges are wonderful in our region because they give people that step to be able to get those gen eds at a community college before they go on to work on their bachelor's or their master's. And then I would also want to say that 4-year college, it's not for everyone. We need to be able to support those who are going into trade schools. And also people need to understand, and our kids need to understand, that there's many unions out there that will pay the tuition. And then on the other side of the training, there's a really good job that is available. And so those are the things that I want to support. But we've got to make sure that we're doing right by our students. And, one of the things that I see as a bright spot, for instance, is Illinois State University has a great surge of freshmen in the freshman class here today. And these are going to be the leaders of tomorrow.
So our next question comes from Radonna in Bloomington. Can you tell us how the infrastructure law will impact our part of Illinois?
Yeah, Radonna, I think that's a great question. First of all, I think, Illinois, we were the butt of many jokes for many years because you knew when you came into Illinois that, the hubcap would fall off of your car. And, all the jokes aside, things are changing in our state. And we have to look at why this is changing, right? We have to look back at the 117th Congress. That was the last Congress. Passing the infrastructure law helped appropriate the funds so that we could get people to work, we could repair the bridges, the overpasses, repair the highway infrastructure. Not only is this an investment in us being a little bit more comfortable as we go down the road, think about the wear and tear that we don't have on our vehicles. If we have smooth roads and bridges, that means that the trucks on the interstate are going to have problems. Because when a truck on the interstate has a problem, who will end up paying for that? It's the consumer in the end, right? So making sure that we have infrastructure. And also with infrastructure, it's not just roads and bridges. It's also the water plants. I have been to many of the communities in our district, from Freeport, all the way down through Lanark and to Bloomington Normal, to make sure that we're appropriating the right funds so that we can get these water plants online. Not only is this going to sustain us going forward, it's going to make us safer because we're not going to have the dangerous PFAS chemicals that are in the water. That's where the infrastructure law comes into place. And so we have to look there at the fact that who did that? It was Congress. It was this administration that did that. The shovels are on the ground. The end loaders are moving dirt today because of that law. Another thing is our airports. In Illinois 17, we have 4 commercial airports. We have Rockford, Moline, Peoria, and Bloomington Normal. And Illinois' airports are expected to receive $600 million for infrastructure development just over the next 5 years. And that ends up being good paying jobs.
Our next question comes from Randall in Rock Island, who asks, how would a government shutdown affect appointments at the VA?
That's a great question, and we have so many veterans that need to be taken care of in our district. And that's first and foremost. All VA medical facilities are essential. And saying that, they're going to remain operational. The VA will continue to process veterans' benefits. That's going to be so important. However, we have to understand that veterans are going to be impacted by the shutdown of other services that they count on, including job training, education, support for veteran-owned businesses, and potentially homeless veterans as well, their assistance. And so if you or anyone else here tonight has trouble accessing any veterans services, you have my word. Call us here in the office. I will speak to you personally. We need to make sure that we're taken care of. And you can just go to sorensen.house.gov and get in touch with us that way. But listen, we have to understand that if a government shutdown happens, that our office is going to remain open. We're going to try to do as much work for the people as we possibly can. If there's a government shutdown, my office is not going to shut down. We're going to make sure that we're open for business because the people of our district, they deserve everything that we can give them.
So, Congressman, looking at the clock, it looks like we only have time for one more question. And this one comes from John from USP Thompson. And John is wondering what impact the shutdown will have on the prison. There are a lot of single parents on staff, and when they can't go to work, it impacts their paycheck.
Well, John, thank you for that question, and thank you for your advocacy on behalf of the men and women that work at USP Thompson. I appreciate every one of the people that serve us at USP Thompson. They go to work every day. And they have to, they deserve to know that they're going to be paid for their hard work. And federal employees that are classified as essential report to work during a government shutdown, and then they're going to have to work without pay. So we need to make sure for the safety of those folks that are working at USP Thompson that we have to fund the government. People need the security of their paycheck. So that they can support themselves, their families. And for instance, in Thompson, if we're withholding a paycheck, then that means that families aren't going to go out to eat. They're not going to go out to Savannah and get that pizza and mayonnaise. They're not going to Mount Carroll. They're not going down to Fulton either. And that means our mom and pops are going to hurt too. And so we have to understand that there's going to be real impacts if we don't keep the government running past Saturday night.
So as I mentioned, Congressman, we do need to begin to wrap up this call, but I want to make sure that I give you some time for some closing thoughts, please.
I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone for being with us here tonight. I heard so much positive feedback from the last time that we did one of these telephone town halls because, this is a chance that we can kind of sit down, check the politics and just have conversations with one another. And I really appreciate that. I look at what I'm able to do in this position, the honor that I have been given by the voters of the district, of my hometown. I think a lot about who I serve. And that's not anybody that's on Capitol Hill today. I don't serve anybody in Washington, D.C. today. But I'll tell you who I do serve. I serve Albert. I don't know if you know Albert or not. If you do, you're living a good life because I got to meet Albert because he was part of the Quad Cities Honor Flight. And he got on a plane in Moline, flew to Dulles, and got on a bus with about 100 other veterans. And I took time out of my day, didn't tell them I was coming, and I went and met them down at the World War II Memorial. Now, I only had about an hour before I had to get back up on Capitol Hill to have votes. But I got to meet Albert. He's 96 years old. He's from East Moline, Illinois. He's in a wheelchair. And he's a World War II vet. And I got to ask Albert, because, see, I'm his congressman. What do you want me to do for you in Congress? And keep in mind, we're at the World War II Memorial. Both my grandparents served in World War II. And I had the honor of being able to talk with a vet. And he said, we need to strive for peace and we need to work with one another. And really, that really encapsulates the reason why I'm here, the reason why I'm putting in the hard work, the reason I'm determined to bring success back home for the people. Because this has nothing to do with politics, and it has everything to do with making sure that we serve the public. And we have to remember that as we're bombarded with all of the politics, whether that's on social media or the news. We need to focus on the real people. And the majority of the people here in Congress, they're good people that want to serve. And we've got to focus on those. So I'll leave you with that little upbeat optimism that maybe I always had, when I was on TV for how many years doing the weather. But I really believe that the brightest days that we have are still in front of us. So thank you all so much for joining us here for our telephone town hall tonight.
As the Congressman just said, thank you for joining tonight's telephone town hall. Now, if you haven't spoken to a member of our team yet about subscribing to the Congressman's e-newsletter, simply stay on the line, and at the sound of the tone, spell out your name and email address slowly, and we'll get you enrolled. So again, at the sound of the tone that's coming up in just a moment at the end of this call, please spell out your name and your email address, and we'll get you subscribed to the Congressman's e-newsletter. Thanks again for participating in this call. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and have a great night.